Okay, welcome back everybody to Python Basics episode 5. So today we'll be coding our first mini program within Python using everything we've learned from the previous 4 episodes. So this program is going to be a average grade calculator. So this is going to be a simple average grade calculator where we'll be calculating a grade for a single person, and this person will have a first and a last name, and they will have a set number of grades, and then this set number of grades will be calculated using some iteration and some if and else statements, and we'll have their final average grade outputted to the terminal. To start off with this tutorial, we are going to be doing some techniques from Python Basics 1 with strings in assigning this person's name. Now, there is a way of inputting, so you choosing input for a person's name. I'm going to show you that option as well, although to start we are just going to be assigning this person's name to a variable. Without further ado, let's get started. We're just going to write the variable name. So name equals, and then we're going to put a first and last name with a space splitting in between it. I'm just going to use a random name I can think of off the top of my head. Feel free to use your own name or a random name you think off the top of your head, or it doesn't even have to be a name. It's just going to be what this person is called. It really can be just one name. It can be a first and last name. Can be a number that's a string. It's up to you, but for this tutorial I'm going with the first and last name. So our person is going to be called Bob Jones. So after we have our name, we want to make a for loop that gets all these grades for the amount of grades that he has achieved, not within the percentage he achieved, but how many grades he got. So if he took 8 units, he has 8 grades, or if he took 8 classes in high school, he has 8 grades for 8 classes, that type of thing. So firstly, we're going to assign a variable called number of grades. We're just going to call this num of grades, just to avoid having a really long variable name. That's equals to as well, and we're going to just preset this to 3. You can set a higher number. 3 is just, I think, an easy one for this tutorial, and there is also an option for input of that number as well from the terminal when you run the program that I will go through at the end of this tutorial. But for now, we're going to stick with just statically assigning things to variables. So we have Bob Jones, and he has taken 3 classes. So now we're going to make a for loop for grade in range. So we want the range. And then we're going to say from range 1 to number of grades. And then we're going to go into the for loop. So indent, put the little ellipse at the end, and then indent in. And we're going to write grade equals. Now we're going to use the random function. So he's going to have a random 3 grades, that are going to be between 0 and 100 for 0 to 100%. So using techniques from previous videos, we're going to import the random function at the top here. So import random. Now we can use the random package and its key feature that we need, the randint function from the random package. So here we just want to write random, then randint, and now we want to put 0 here. Now you can change this if you don't want your person to have any failing grades, then put a 50 there. So 50 is the smallest number that this random integer is allowed to generate. So you can pick this range however you want. We're just going to go from 0 to 100. So Bob's 3 grades that he gets randomly assigned can be anywhere from 0% to 100% at this time. So now we've got a for loop that goes through a range of 1 to the amount of grades, or the amount of classes, or the amount of grades Bob has achieved here. So 3, and then for every grade in that range, a random percentage is assigned. So we're just going to print this grade now to see if what we've done so far is working as intended. So if we run this now, if you look over to the right on the terminal, we should have 3 random integers printed out for grades. Oh, my bad, we only have 2 integers, so I actually forgot the computer counts from 0 there. So see, that thing's tricky even for me to this day. It's a thing you have to remember. So if we run this again now, we get the 3 grades. So Bob, the first run that I did, he achieved not so good grades. But yeah, they're the 3 numbers I got. It'll be different for you because they're random integers, but as long as you got 3 integers, then we're on the right track. So we can leave this print statement here for now. It's not part of the whole project in the end, but we'll just leave it there for now. Okay, so after this, we are going to add a variable. We are going to name this variable sum of grades. So this is going to hold the calculation of what our 3 grades are added together. What's the sum of them? So it starts at 0, but it gets added to in the for loop in a way that I'll show you now. Okay, so if we go into our for loop here and we write sum of grades, so we call that variable and we put it equal to itself, so what it currently is, plus the grade that we just randomly generated. So now it will update with the new grade and add it to itself every time we iterate through from grade to the length number of grades. We're just going to print sum of grade now in the terminal on the right to see if it's working as intended. If you got a number, a singular number, then it should be working fine. Now, just to go through it again, this added our 3 grades together to make a sum. Now an average calculation, so another variable called average grade, and we're going to set this equal to a float. Now this float will be automatically a float, but we're going to declare it a float in brackets anyway. So the calculation that this float will be an outcome to, or the calculation that average grade will be the outcome for, is the sum of grades, the sum of our grades that we just calculated, and then divided by the number of grades or the number of classes the person took. So sum, divide, size, a normal average calculation. Then we're going to just print the average to the terminal to see as it's working as intended. As you see, we got this average number with a lot of decimals behind it. So we might not want that many decimals behind it, behind our static integer grade that we calculated. So to achieve this, we are going to use the round function from our numbers video. So if we put this whole calculation within the round function in Python, so round and then open close brackets around the whole calculation, and then we choose how many decimal points we want to round to. So let's go with 2 decimal points. That's quite common in grading systems, I think. So now we print average grade again in the terminal, and we get only 2 decimal points in our output now. So average grade is our average grade rounded to 2 decimal points. So now we have a more clean output, and we can move forward into if and else statements and decisions. So this will be decisions deciding if our person Bob Jones passed, failed, or just passed. That's the 3 conditions we're going to go with now. There's more comparisons you can have for particular grades like A, B, C, D. That is quite more complex than a first program, so I'm going to skip out on that now. But if you want to play around with the code in the description of this first program and add that yourself and figure it out and play with it, you can. That's all up to you. But in the tutorial, we're just going to cover practically passing, getting exactly 50, and failing, so getting less than 50 and greater than 50. So we have all these variables, so I'm just giving you a few seconds to catch up in typing code if you're a bit behind or you're a few lines of code behind where I am in the tutorial right now. So just a quick catch up and highlighting some of the main parts that we have done. So we're going to remove this print average line now because we don't need to print the average anymore. That was just to check that our average grade calculation was working as intended. So now when we move forward, we are going to make an if statement. So this is from the previous video, Python Basics 4. So we're just going to write if average grade, because average grade is our outcome that we want to test with our condition. And so we want it to be, this is testing if Bob Jones failed. So less than 50. So less than sign and then a 50. So if our outcome is less than our condition of 50, then do the following. So our following is going to be a print statement, which is going to be a concatenated string. So the first part of this string will be our name. So our name is already of type string, so we can just write name plus, now this is concatenating, and we can type a line like this person failed or something like that. You can type any line you want here, but just make sure it involves telling the terminal that this person failed or this person was unsuccessful in passing and things like that. So I'm going to write failed with a final grade of, and then little dots, and then leave it like that. So this will be the person's name, failed with a final grade of, and then a string. So we're changing our average grade from a float to a string, so it can be legal to be concatenated with the other two strings before it, and then plus again after our average grade is inputted, and then a percentage sign. So it gets our average grade when printed to the terminal gets a little percentage sign behind it, so it looks like more clean output of a real grade. So that's our if statement. Failing. Now we'll do just a quick test on it. Now you might have to run a few times for this to test this because we are generating random numbers, so he might get over 50 the first time you run it. So just run it again until it achieves the if statement and prints what we just wrote before. So if you get run again in the terminal, run it again. So an else statement, just put print run again there, so it tells you that it wasn't successful. If he got a less than 50 average, it should print the line we just wrote. Oh, I'm just adding an extra space in there, so his name's not completely concatenated onto the fail with the final grade of. There's a space between it. So I've run that and it's worked. So that's awesome. We have our if statement working now. So we can move on to a else if statement. So this else if statement is gonna be, I'm thinking of, if he got exactly 50, and then we can write a concatenated string in the way of, he just passed, but it wasn't a safe pass. It was just scraped through. So we're gonna do elif average grade, because average grade is our outcome again, and then our condition will be 50 again, but the comparison condition won't be a less than sign, it will be the double equals to be, is our average grade exactly 50, right? So you're just going to type two equal signs here, and then 50, and then the dots again to make it into a loop, indent in to the next line, and print. So this is a big string again, practically the same way as the big concatenated string we did in the original if statement above, but just with a different kind of wording here, maybe just passed with a final grade of, or just a grade of, plus, and then the string, of average grade again, so average grade but turned to a string data type so it can be eligible for concatenation, and then the percentage sign again. So now you can try test run this again, but it's probably going to be quite rare for your random number generator to get exactly 50%, so you might be sitting there running that all day. But if it's typed just like the above string but with an elif, there's no way that should have any errors if it is on screen, so that's fine. And now we can move to the else statement. So the else statement will be if it's neither of these, so that will be just if he's passing. So if it's not less than 50, then it's higher than 50, so Bob Jones has passed. So we're just going to write a whole concatenated string again, and same process, his name plus a space plus safely passed with a final grade of, let's say, just the grade of again, plus the string of average grade. So once again, average grade turned into a string data type for concatenation, and then the percent behind it again. So there it is, guys. That's basically our whole program in the base model of it. You can run this now and see if it's working. Every time you run it, you should get kind of different result because it's randomly numbered, random integer generated grades. So now I'm going to run through how you can let a user input the number of classes the person took and the student's name when the code is compiled and ran. So I'm going to quickly go through that so you can have a bit more functionality, and you can pick the person's name, a different name every time you run it, and you can pick a different number of classes he took or she took every time you run the program. So if we go to the name line here, and we get rid of the static name we had there and we put a string, so this means anything they input will just be converted to a string. So this gets rid of having errors when going through the if statements. So name is always a string type, so if they put in a 1 or a symbol or anything like that, it will just be assigned to a string anyway, and it won't disturb. And then input, so this is an input function, so it prompts input in the terminal, and then what you put in the brackets is the prompt code that you want to be typed. So now the terminal, when you run this, will ask enter a name, and then you will enter the name or enter the data after its prompt message. So we're going to say enter a name of the student, and then we can run this, and it should ask you to enter a name in the terminal, and then when you do that, it should go through and complete the rest of the code. So as you can run this here, Mary Jones, I guess we can put, and we get what we wanted. Now we can do the exact same process with number of grades, but we want it to be an integer. So we put int data type, input again, and we can write something similar, like enter number of classes student participated in, or number of grades achieved, any kind of message, it's up to you. Okay, so once you've done that, run that again. It should ask you for both these inputs now, and you can choose random ones for that. I'm going to go with Mary Jones again, and 10, let's say 10 classes. Mary Jones took 10 classes, and there you go, you get an output. So there you have it, guys. That's our first mini program within Python. I'm going to leave the code for you guys in the terminal. This is just in case of any errors you had that you want to fix with the original code, or if you want to download the code anywhere else and play with it. If you didn't follow along and code to this tutorial while listening to it, you can still just get the code that was made in this tutorial in the description. For the end, I'm just going to put comments in the program, which is always good practice. It tells a user or a fellow programmer that ever finds this program, or you ever give this program, what's happening in each line of code. You don't necessarily have to have one in each line of code when you get into bigger coding projects, but at least one for each section. So this is going to be just speed typed on the screen. I'll let you watch that through, but also the final version in the description will have these comments involved within the program. So without further ado, I just want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed making our first mini program within Python. Next episode, we'll be covering a more advanced topic, which will be functions. So I hope you can all join me for that, because functions is a major part within object-oriented programming and mainly programming as a whole. So awesome thing to learn, and it is an awesome thing to learn. Besides that, there's nothing much more from me. Just leave a like if you liked it, leave a dislike if you didn't, and I hope to see you next time.